I was in London during the 1940 Blitz when the Nazi Luftwaffe had complete dominance of the skies and destroyed large parts of the British capital. It did prevail. I'm also a D-Day veteran, June 6, 1944. We had complete dominance of the skies, but we still had to fight all the way to the Elbe River.
That was award-winning journalist Arnaud de Borchgrave talking to us back in September about his personal experiences during World War II, comparing the challenges air power encounter then to today's situation in the Middle East. Editor, war correspondent, author, and Newsmax friend Arnaud de Borchgrave passed away Sunday.
Arnaud had a very long, celebrated career covering 18 wars, can you imagine, and interviewed several world leaders, including Winston Churchill.
And last year, Arnaud received the highest civilian honor France bestows, the Legion of Honor, for his services during World War II and his journalistic accomplishments. Arnaud left us at age 88. And here to celebrate the memory of Arnaud de Borchgrave is our own John Bachman.
It's good to be here with you guys, and of course, very sad to learn the news over the weekend like everybody else, and seeing the confirmation that Arnaud had passed on. I remember starting here at Newsmax about 3.5 years ago, and one of the first or second things, well, really like the third thing we had to do was learn how to pronounce Arnaud de Borchgrave's name. Even though he was a legend, we interviewed him a lot because of his experience, because of his personal insight into what took place over those 18 conflicts you heard Miranda mention, and his personal involvement with war. This is a guy who stormed the beaches at Normandy. His family fled Nazi occupation in Belgium to move to the United Kingdom, and we heard him talking about living in the UK as the Luftwaffe rained down their Blitzkrieg and their bombs over London. So talking to him and, you know, seeing him up in this 2 box is very familiar with me right now, having interviewed him a dozen times. I always learn so much, not just about our current conflicts, but how prior conflicts played into the current situations we're in today. And I remember so many cases of where he would make a statement that would just kind of knock you on your feet. And I remember talking to him a few years ago, about the situation in Iran and nuclear weapons and the run-up to the presidential election in 2012. And here he is saying that it is inevitable that Iran would achieve nuclear weapons, not just because of what was taking place today, guys, but because he told me that the Shah of Iran told him so in 1973. So when you can talk to somebody who has had personal communication with these figures of history, you know, the Shah of Iran seemed like a two-dimensional historical object for someone like myself, but here is a guy who made the Shah a 3D person, and why what he did in Iran was still relevant today. You know, and his foresight as well, things like the current conflict we're seeing now with ISIS. We talked to him right before the presidential election again in 2012, a similar situation, and he was talking about ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and while the administration was mentioning that Al-Qaeda was on the run, the war on terror was coming to a close or maybe entering a new phase, he was saying, no, this is not what's taking place here. Al-Qaeda is more dangerous than ever, not just because you cut the head off the snake, you have all these unaffiliated groups, and he was talking about ISIS before ISIS even really had a name.
When you think back about Arnaud and his career, and I think you point this out, the number of contacts he made in that extraordinary life that almost completed 9 decades is really something to behold. Is there any one thing in particular that you will carry with you about Arnaud and your interaction? Just
the amount of preparation that I always made sure that went into an Arnaud interview, because of that knowledge that he had. You could not ask him a question because he would follow up with a quote. What are you talking about, John? I need more information. So you always had to make sure you were prepared. And I remember studying these events that we were talking about, not just the current events, but what led up to this and the history that went along with that. That's what I remember most about interviewing him. It was a challenge, but it was a fun challenge and something I always
If you were going to describe him in one word, what would it be?
Bold.
Bold.
Bold. Bold in his action, bold in his predictions, bold in his commentary and criticism, and fair, too. Bold and fair. I can't limit to one word. I'll say 2 words.
We'll give you 2.
I think of flamboyance and also nonchalance, because he was very knowledgeable, but he would mention those contacts and those experiences. And in fact, when he talked to us about the Blitzkrieg in the 40s and then having those air raids in London, it was something indeed. We will miss Arnaud de Borchgrave, who passed away at age 88. We thank you for your time. A reminder that Midpoint follows this broadcast for now. Stay brave. Stay free, stay tuned. We'll see you tomorrow, 9 in the East, 6 a.m. in the West.